So, what do you think is the worst that could happen if you just change your mind about a real estate agent? Well, for one home buyer, the answer turned out to be a secret deal, a totally broken contract, and a jaw dropping $24,000 bill. Yeah. Today, we're going to break down how this one single case could actually change the way all of us buy a home from now on.
I mean, it's a question you've probably thought about, right? It seems kind of hypothetical, but for this one buyer, it became a very expensive reality. So let's get into it. What really happens when you sign on that dotted line with an agent and then decide, nah, I'm going to go my own way?
Okay, so to really get what's going on here, we got to set the stage a little. Back in 2024, there was this massive settlement with the National Association of Realtors that completely reshaped how agents get paid. And because of that, it's put a huge new spotlight on one specific document, a document that's now more important for buyers than ever before.
And that document? It's the Buyer Broker Agreement, or you'll hear it called a BBA. Now, let's be super clear about this. This is not some casual handshake deal. Nope, it's a legally binding contract. It spells out exactly what an agent is going to do for you, and, this is the big one, how they're going to get paid for all that work.
All right, so let's get right into our case study. This whole thing happened down in Florida. It involves a brokerage called Echo Fine Properties and a home buyer who is, all set to find their dream home.
So, it all kicked off pretty normally. In late 2024, the buyer signed what's known as an exclusive agreement, and that just means they were promising to work only with Echo Fine Properties for a certain amount of time. It's a really standard thing in the industry, right? It's just there to make sure the agent's time and effort are actually going to get paid for. But yeah, things didn't stay simple for very long.
And this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. See, the brokerage didn't find out what was going on from the buyer themselves. No way. They found out about the breach of contract pretty much by accident.
Just look at how this all went down, step by step. So almost right after signing that exclusive agreement, the same buyer goes and makes an offer on a home, but with a totally different real estate firm, okay? Then it gets even wilder. The buyer tries to change the contract, swapping their name out for their mom's. Eventually, they switched it back again, and in February 2025, they closed on an $800,000 house, all while they were still technically, legally under contract with their first agent. So once that deal was done, you can bet Echo Fine Properties wasn't just going to let it slide. They filed for arbitration, which is basically a legal battle, just not in a regular courtroom. And the buyer? Oh, they showed up with a whole list of excuses for why they shouldn't have to pay up.
And this is where the buyer's whole defense just crumbled. The arbitrator took their case apart, piece by piece. The buyer said, hey, the 180-day contract was way too long. The arbitrator's response? Nope, the contract was crystal clear. The buyer claimed their agent did basically nothing for them, but the arbitrator found evidence that the agent had, in fact, educated them and shown them homes. And that whole story about just being a lender for their mom? Yeah, the arbitrator saw right through that, calling the name changes what they were, a blatant attempt to sneak around the agreement they'd already signed.
So, after looking at all the facts, all the evidence, the arbitrator was ready to hand down a final decision. And boy, was it going to be a costly one. The verdict couldn't have been more clear. The buyer had obviously and knowingly violated the terms of their exclusive contract. So, the main takeaway here, that agreement, it absolutely held up under legal pressure. And here it is. This is the number that makes everybody's jaw drop. The buyer was ordered to pay the brokerage $24,000. So where did a number like that even come from? Well, it wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It was simple math, straight from the contract they signed. The agreement laid out a 3% commission. And what's 3% of the $800,000 home they bought? You guessed it, exactly $24,000. I mean, this whole case is just a huge reminder. The terms you agree to in the beginning are the exact same terms you'll be held to in the end.
So you might be wondering, okay, why are we focusing so much on one single case in Florida? Well, because this isn't just about one buyer making a bad choice. It's a huge sign of a much larger trend, and it has massive implications for literally anyone who's thinking about buying a home right now.
And believe me, this is not just a one-off thing. The very same brokerage has already flagged 2 other potential contract breaches. One of them was on a $1.4 million sale. The broker owner, a guy named Jeff Lichtenstein, he actually thinks this kind of lawsuit could become very high all across the country. And this quote from him really just sums the whole thing up perfectly. He says, the arbitrator's decision confirms what brokerages have been saying this whole time. A buyer-broker agreement is a real, legally binding contract. It's there to protect the agent who puts in all that time and effort, and it absolutely binds the buyer to the deal they made. Which, leaves us with a pretty big question. These agreements, they were originally meant to formalize the whole relationship, to protect both the buyer and the agent. But as this $24,000 lesson just showed us, these contracts now have some very, very sharp teeth. And it really forces all of us to ask, in this brand new era of real estate, who does this agreement really protect?